This is the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio. Radio the way it should be heard. And now, Mr. Neely Fuller.
If you do not understand white supremacy, which is racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Only confuse you. Only confuse you.
Good morning, and welcome to TalkTainmentRadio.com. We go where you go on the world's greatest radio. You are now in touch with the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby, and this is radio the way it should be heard. To get in contact with the show, you may do so by calling 1-877-932-9766. To view and see the show, all you do is go to the YouTube channel and type in Talktainment. Hit the space bar, and then it's Talktainment, Talking Radio, and then Talktainment number 2, and then you're there. And while you're there, hit the like and share button, and that'll be good. You can also Gmail me at the numero 7 Mr. Bobby at gmail.com, and I will get that. And of course, you can also view this show via Facebook by going to facebook.com/Talktainment, and you're all in. I think that's all the particulars that we have to do right here. Let me say that Mr. Fuller is on the line live from Washington, D.C. He is the author of the fantastic book, which he will be talking about, the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept. He will discuss more about that as we continue on with the show. So let me say good morning to you, Mr. Fuller.
Good morning.
All righty, you're coming in loud and clear. Very good. To start today's program off, this is a continuation of last week's program. I got quite a few emails or Gmails about that, and a few comments. They really liked the suggestions that you made. And one of them came from Brother Muko, in which you had suggested that you did not know the page where the information came from. So somebody by the name of Dominic Gmailed me. We're talking about the 4Ds, and he said that information can be found on page 246 of the Revised Expanded Edition at the bottom of it. And those 4Ds were disapproval, disappointment, discomfort, and death, which Brother Muko from Baltimore was trying to explain. Now, do you have your copy with you? You can look at that and go into a little more depth to answer Brother Muko's question. At the bottom of page 246 in the Revised Expanded Edition.
I see that there. Correct.
Yeah.
I had forgotten that I had written that.
Yes.
I've written so much. I'm taking notes all the time, almost every day, too. So my mind doesn't recall a lot of the things that I have written. That's why I like to write things down.
Yes, sir.
And on page 246 of the Revised Edition of the book,
yes.
That is there.
Yes.
The question specifically was, what should you expect to receive from your efforts to end racism and or produce justice? I think that's a legitimate question.
Yes.
So if people ask, well, getting rid of racism, what do you expect to get out of that? All right, well, what you expect to get out of it, according to the compensatory counter-racist logic, is you should, for the most part, expect to receive disapproval, disappointment, discomfort, and death. That is, you're in a prison system called racism. So when you make an effort, see, because I asked, what do you expect to receive from your efforts to end racism? Racism is the dominant political and religious force on the planet, and it's designed to do harm the people of color. That's what it's for. And if you try to do anything against it, one thing you can expect is disapproval, both from white people, sizable numbers of white people, and from a sizable number of non-white people. If you're talking about racism all the time, that's number one. And then you can also expect disappointment. Sometimes people talk to me and they say that, I'm disappointed in black people's reaction when I talk to them about racism, or when I talk to them about replacing racism with justice. They just don't want to hear. That goes into number 3, which is discomfort. You can expect people to react that way. And then if you really get serious about really trying to do anything to replace the system of racism with the system of justice, and it appears to be effective, then you have that fourth thing, death. The fourth D in that list of things, out of disapproval, disappointment, discomfort. You can expect to be killed. Why? Because we're in a war, and we're prisoners of war. If you try to dismantle that prison, and you are appearing to be effective in doing so, you can expect to be killed, like in any war. We're in a war. That's what racism is. Racism is war. It's not just some type of mild disapproval of one person to another. It's absolute war in all 9 areas of activity. And so these are the things you can expect. The study of the past, as it says on page 246, a study of the past shows that all attempts at ending racism and/or at producing justice has resulted in disapproval, disappointment, discomfort, and/or death for great numbers of people who began to have a serious effect against those powerful people who are opposed to ending racism and/or who are opposed to justice being produced.
Yes.
And that's what the record shows.
Okay. Now, at the top of the page, I found it very interesting when you said or suggested about, at the top of the page, 247, it says, do not speak or act as if white supremacy, racism, can be ended by non-white people doing everything that many or most white people do in many or most areas of activity. You suggested choose to do only what produces a constructive result. Well, my question to that is if disapproval, disappointment, discomfort, and death are basically going to be the results, then why do that if this is what you're going to face?
Oh, well, in any war, if you're going to fight a war, you have to know that you're going to have this discomfort and disappointment and disapproval, and that you're going to have death in a war. It goes with the package. And if you're a prisoner of war, and you understand that. We didn't ask for this war. The victims of racism didn't come into the world asking to be subject to racism. But as long as anybody, all the people on the planet now who are classified as black and are non-white, know that they are born into a system that was already in place, a system of racism.
Yes.
The most powerful government that the world has ever known. And that government has never weakened or gone away. There have been some shakiness in it. And that's why the white supremacists now are trying to stay in the refinement mode. They established it a long time ago. The maintenance was relatively easy. They had the advantage of knowledge and understanding of what they were doing. They surpassed everybody else in the world who had some ideas about what their religion should be, or what their politics should be, or what the different areas of activity should be like. But the white supremacists became smarter than everybody else who was opposed to the system of white supremacy, and that's why you have it now. It's called racism broadly, but it's in two words, or in a few words, the system of white supremacy. That is the most powerful government that has ever appeared among the people of this planet. No religion, not Christianity, not Judaism, not Islam, not Hinduism, all of the major religions, all of the major political systems, socialism, they say, whatever that means, communism, whatever that means, capitalism, whatever that means, none of them, all of them combined, have not been more powerful than the system of white supremacy in all 9 areas of activity when it came to the interaction between people who are classified as white and non-white. That system has been in place, and the system is specifically designed to dominate and mistreat, do harm to people of color.
Okay.
And that's all we have experienced.
Okay. So to set the record straight, you have suggested that these 4 Ds are the expectations when you go to this on this journey, this quest to produce justice, to expect that these 4 things are going to happen. Is that correct?
Yes, most likely. I mean, you can expect this. It may not happen, but you can expect it.
Yeah, more than likely it will happen.
More than likely.
Yes.
I mean, and many people who have talked to me, I mean, students who are going to school and all like that, they say, well, when I talk to people, when I talk to white people on the campus, or when I talk to non-white people, they don't want to talk about this race stuff. They want to talk about having fun or doing something else, and all like that. But the race thing is still there. See what I mean? And you don't want to talk about something, it's the elephant in the room, to use a cliche. And everybody wants to try to talk around it, but they keep bumping into the elephant and then complain about the elephant being there when the elephant is stepping on their particular foot,
yes,
on the individual's foot. But they're not thinking about, well, maybe we need to get rid of this elephant in this room. I mean, so that we can have some space in this room to do the things that need to be done. And we need to stop trying to ignore it, because you can't ignore it.
Right.
The elephant keeps stepping around on people all over the place. It takes up the whole room. You can't do anything. You can't breathe. All right? So that's what we're faced with and have been faced with.
Okay. All right. TalkToHim@radio.com is a 24/7, no-charge, worldwide broadcasting facility with hosts delivering on various topics such as news and lifestyle, sports, law, health, wellness, religion, and, of course, politics. Now, here's one that I would like to share with you, and it is my show, Talking Sports with Mr. Bobby. Now, our next show will be March the 20th, and this year, and our special guest will be Brother Muko, will be live on the line. He's from Baltimore, Maryland, and he will be bringing the fictional TV drama The Wire to real life. I spoke with him and asked him several questions about that, and he's going to share with what is really going on in Baltimore. Quite frankly, it resembles what The Wire has. Those of you who watched that drama on, I believe it was HBO, really brought to light the things that are going on in Baltimore. I know Freddie Gray was killed there under mysterious circumstances. The political, the educational system, the newspapers, the schools, all the things that you saw on The Wire, the drug problems, the corruption, all that, he will bring that to light. And also what he's trying to do something about that in a compensatory way with his care unit. Now, that my show, Talking Sports with Mr. Bobby, and all the other shows that Talktainment have are exclusive to TalkTainmentRadio.com, and all you have to do is go to the TalkTainmentRadio.com homepage, click on Programs, and there you will find the shows, little bios, and all the information that you need. All that comes from TalkTainmentRadio.com, radio the way it should be heard. For those tuning in, my name is Mr. Bobby. I am the co-host of the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. The phone lines are now open. If you would like to call, you can by calling 1-877-932-9766. If you would like to Gmail me, you can. Now, I cannot promise that they will all be read today, but some of them will be. The address is the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, B-O-B-B-Y, at gmail.com, and I will read those. You can also get in the show. You can see and hear us by going to the YouTube channel. Type in the word Talktainment, and then scroll down to and then radio. Then scroll down to the Talktainment 2, and then you'll be there. And then while you're there, hit the like and the share button, and we can go on, from there. All righty. Let's do this. Do we have a phone call before I go on? We do? Okay. Line 1, you are now on with Mr. Fuller. What is your question for Mr. Fuller today?
Oh, hi. How you guys doing? My question for Mr. Fuller is, I would like to know what it was like for him under the time period of, after segregation and, restaurants and bathrooms were open to black people. I know it had to feel very awkward. I'm just curious to know how it felt after that time period. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Fuller?
Oh, well, when we could start going in restaurants and stopovers when we were going, on a bus or a train and all like that, we wouldn't have to change seats. I mean, you'd have to do that on trains sometimes and on buses for sure. When you cross certain state lines, the bus driver would let you know that, okay, black people have to go to the back. I mean, you have to get up out of your seat and go to the back of the bus because in this particular state, I mean, that's what the law was.
Wow.
I'm in the South. So I had to stand up across I was on leave and my mother was dying of cancer in Arkansas. And I stood up in the aisle all across the state of Arkansas. I mean, in the middle of the night, I was the only one in my uniform. I had my ribbons on and everything. And I'd come back from overseas.
Mm-hmm.
And, and there were empty seats. But I couldn't sit down.
What?
Because these seats were reserved for white people, the royalty.
Yeah.
Right. See, I'm a person of color.
You were in uniform?
Didn't make any difference. My uniform is my skin, like it is with every non-white person.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, your skin is your uniform in the system of white supremacy. That's your uniform. I don't care what kind of uniform you're wearing. It made out of cloth or whatever, or what your title is. Your uniform, your prison uniform, is the shade of your skin. And so that's the way it was.
Let me be clear here. You could go into another or a foreign country, whatever that is, and fight for this country, but when you came over here, or this, whatever this is, but when you came back, quote, home, you were still going to be mistreated, even though you put on that uniform that identified you as an American soldier. But when you came back here, you were going to be mistreated, and were mistreated.
Among the Japanese, I was in Japan during that time, because I had an Air Force uniform. Years earlier than that, I had an Army uniform.
Yes,
I've been in 2 branches of the service. But at that particular time, I had an Air Force uniform on, and I was in Japan. Now, Japan, I'm wearing the uniform of people who the Japanese remembered dropped bombs on them in World War II. They associated that uniform that I was wearing with that. The Japanese lady that I worked alongside of every day, told me that her father was killed in a B-29 raid in World War II just a few years before. about 10 years before when I was in Japan. But I was treated by the Japanese better in their villages and in the towns that I went through. And I very seldom went into town and all like that, but going through Tokyo, a Japanese person, a male person, who saw that I was kind of turned around about where to go to find Ueno Station. That was the name of the station, the train station. He carried my bags voluntarily. He saw that I was confused.
Yes.
So he just came up and offered, I didn't know what he was up to. And he said, he indicated he would help me to get to the station. And I told him he didn't have to carry the bags. I could find the station if he'd just point to it where to go. And he wanted to make sure that I got there. So he took me to the station. I mean, carrying my bags with him, and then, bowed and like that was their ancient custom.
Yes, sir.
Bowed several times and then walked off. Now, when I came back here, all I got on the bus in Arkansas was hostile looks. The very fact that I was in uniform, those white people looked at me as if I was some type of alien, as if to say to me, I think you know that you wearing that uniform, you think that wearing that uniform is going to get you some privileges or going to get you some type of respect here. You get nothing. All right? You could see it in their eyes. They watched me the whole time I was standing up on that bus, making sure that I didn't sit down. That was along about 1956 or 57, right along the time of the Little Rock crisis in Arkansas.
Wow.
All right?
Wow.
Now, that's a true story.
Yes, sir.
Okay? My mother was dying of cancer. I was going to see her, and I was in uniform, but I could not sit down in a seat that was empty on a bus in Arkansas, under what people say is the land of the free. All right? Color of the skin. That's the criteria.
Okay.
You animal, you were born with the incorrect color. Sorry about that. So you're supposed to be dogged around for the rest of your days.
Wow.
That was the message. And that still is the message.
That still is the message. And that was in 1956. Let's go to the phone lines. What line are we on here? Line number one? Okay, line number one, you are on with Mr. Neely Fuller. What is your question?
Good morning, Mr. Bobby. Mr. Fuller, this is Brother Muko from Baltimore.
Yes, sir.
Where we do the compensatory constructive action meetings and discussions at St. Lo Drive and Lake Clifton Park every Saturday. And we're doing it this Saturday as well at noon, just like last Saturday. Sorry about my call last week, Mr. Fuller. I had our discussion mixed up with your book. You didn't do the 3Ds. That was something that we came up with. But what I wanted to ask you was, can you expound on, for my care unit in Baltimore, how our purpose is to solve problems, but not just solve problems, but solve problems without creating more problems in the process.
Okay.
Oh, well, this is all throughout the book. You just follow the instructions in the book. That's what I wrote the book for. People often ask me, what, okay, Fuller, you're talking about the problem a lot, but what can we do? Just follow the instructions that are in the book in all 9 areas of activity. And pick out what you want that applies to you. Don't ever do anything that doesn't apply to you because you won't do it well. Pick out the things that you think will work for you as an individual. Everything in the book is written for the individual person. I don't believe in this concept of the masses. People are individuals. Every individual has their own outlook on the world that they're in. A person should be allowed that. That's how you have what they call productivity, individual initiative. Because ultimately, that's what you have to have anyway. Getting everybody on the same page at the same moment, that's not going to work because people are under different circumstances. So you have to address any corrective measures to the individual person, wherever they happen to be. Not everybody's circumstances are exactly the same. So you just pick out the things in the textbook for victims of racism that apply to you at the times that they apply. Even the same person won't have the same problems every day. I mean, some problems you have already solved. So the problems that you have solved for yourself, worked it out. Well, whatever suggestion I make about that, since you don't have that problem, you just look at that and say, well, that's not a problem for me. You know, I don't see, you know, I've never even had that problem. So that's, you know, so you just skip past that and find something that is a problem. Like, you know, you might be on a job and you're having problems with a certain person. Mm-hmm. All right? So you try to find something in the textbook that will apply to you in solving that problem with the person. I mean, the book also is kind of written, kind of broad in some places in order to leave you some leeway for using your own ingenuity, your own innovation in a certain circumstance. And sometimes people ask me, you know, I guess there are some white people, and I think I do have some white listeners too, probably some who are just checking to see what black people are doing, and some white people who are sincere. Now, the book covers things that white people can do, even though the book is not written specifically for what white people can do, but it would be incorrect in a compensatory counter-racist code for me to leave out what some white people can do, and two things they can do that are in the book. And so, in fact, there's a long list of things in the book. I've forgotten exactly what the page number is, but a long list of things that white people can do. But two things they must do in order to help correct the situation between white people and non-white people. And number one, top of the list, if I recall correctly, don't ever say anything to a non-white person that is not true. In other words, don't lie.
Okay.
In fact, don't even make a mistake about that.
Okay.
Because that makes you suspect forever. Why? Because the main thing that the white supremacists do is mislead people in the refinement stages of white supremacy.
And number two?
And number two is don't withhold constructive information.
Okay.
Any white person who knows something on a job that, you know, he's informed of something that's going to be of great help to the employees. That white person, if they want to really help solve the race problem, should make a beeline, get up from the desk or come off the assembly line or whatnot and take a break and tell the black person, the nearest black person, this news that you just got that's going to be a benefit. Or any information that you have that's going to be a benefit. Okay. That's not generally known. Tell it to a non-white person. I mean, because they need help the most.
Yes.
Right.
All righty. Let's see here, Mr. Fuller. I'm getting ready to read a Gmail, but before I do that, I want to ask you. I did look in the word guide, and I didn't see these two words in here. But is there a compensatory definition for the word apology and reparations?
The question is there a compensatory definition for
the word apology?
Apology?
And reparations.
No, okay. I don't think that's in there.
Yeah, I realized you said that you couldn't get them all in there, all words in there.
Yes, no, you just have to use the dictionary for that.
Okay.
Standard English dictionary.
Okay.
Oh, there are thousands of words that I would like to have gotten in the book, but then the book would be as thick as one of those dictionaries you see in a public library that you have to wheel around in a cart.
Yes, sir. Okay.
All right.
Well,
so I just tried to pick out certain key words. Reparations, you know, I use a word that comes pretty close to the same thing throughout the entire concept itself. And what is that word? Compensatory. Compensation. See, compensation and reparations are basically the same thing.
Okay.
But now, apology, that's not in there because I just kind of took for granted that most people have an idea of what an apology is.
All right. I asked that because this person, Yatora, asked this question. It says, hi. Mr. Fuller says to never ask for an apology. Isn't asking for reparations the same as asking for an apology? If not, can he explain what is the difference? Thank you.
Oh, the difference is apologies usually just consist of a person just saying. See, that's saying, not doing. A person says, I apologize. Oh, you think that I insulted you? I apologize for my insult, my perceived insult. Or if a person has done some physical harm to you, if a person is apologizing for slavery, and they're just simply using words. See, we usually think of an apology as just being words. Say, well, I apologize. Because a lot of black people have said that white people should apologize officially for slavery. All right? And what they're saying is just say that you're sorry for what your ancestors did. Okay? And you can apologize for the system of segregation. Okay? Racial segregation in the schools and in public places and whatnot, bus stations and etc. Apologize for that in words. See, but reparations, that's something different altogether. Okay. You repair. You make a complete repair for all the damage that is done, all down through these years, these hundreds of years. That's a different thing altogether. That calls for action.
Yes, sir.
That calls for a whole lot of money being spent. An apology is just a handshake. I apologize. Most people understand that. I mean, you step on somebody's foot on the elevator, you say, oh, excuse me, I stepped on your foot, and that's that, all right? But reparations is, hey, you damaged my shoes. You got to pay for the damage, all right? That's the difference there.
Okay, all righty. Let's go to the phone lines here. What line am I on here? Line 1, okay. Line 1, you're now on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead. What is your question?
Good morning, Mr. Bobby, Mr. Fuller.
Morning, sir.
This is Reggie from Charlotte, North Carolina.
Okay.
Mr. Fuller, you define justice as guaranteeing that no person is mistreated and guaranteeing that those that need the most help get the most constructive help. As my experience as a black man in America, in this global system of white supremacy, many of us don't know that we're being mistreated or pretend like we're not being mistreated. What is your definition of mistreatment, Mr. Fuller?
Excellent question. Each person has to determine whether or not they're being mistreated. That's the way it comes down to. That's the democratic process. I mean, you can point out. Now, if you're pointing out, sometimes people just don't know, and that's what I try to do with the book. The entire book, the entire concept, to say that we are born in mistreatment. And so I just alert people, and people might say, well, that's stirring up trouble, where there is none and whatnot. But if you recognize that people are being mistreated, and the people don't know, you can mistreat a child. A child doesn't know, and we're all children in the system of white supremacy. You can be cheated out of your money when you're buying a house. Most likely, in the system of white supremacy, you will be.
Yes. Because
the white supremacists cheat you all the time. And just because you don't know it, if somebody taps you on the shoulder and say, hey, they're charging you too much for that sandwich, all right? I mean, that lady is overcharging you every time you come in here when you buy those sandwiches because you don't know what the real prices are. See, they don't have the prices posted on the wall. So she charges you. She's been charging you because she knows that you don't know. Other people come in here and they get those sandwiches for half the price that you are paying, but you are being cheated because the person knows that you don't know how to count. All right, they found that out. So they cheat you. They cheat you out of your money, and they keep that change, okay? And so you let a person know that. I would want anybody to let me know when I'm paying too much rent, that the person in the next apartment is paying half what I'm paying, all right? I want to know that.
Yes, sir.
I may not know that, but if somebody tells me that, now I can look into it. The person, will say, well, look, it's not, you might say it's not any of my business and all like that, but I thought probably you might want to know. And that's all people should know when there's, alert people when you perceive that they may be mistreated. Ask them to look into it and see if they're being mistreated. The person might say, well, I enjoy paying twice the rent that everybody else is paying. All right, because, hey, I got the money. I don't care. I got unlimited funds. But I don't think the average person will take that position. The average person will ask some questions about that.
Yes. Okay. All righty. Thank you, caller, very much from Charlotte, North Carolina. Let's see. Let's do this. TalkTainmentradio.com. We go where you go. Download the TalkTainmentradio.com app to your cell or to your tablet. That's radio the way it should be heard. I am Mr. Bobby. I am the co-host on the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. Now, to get in contact with the show, do this. Call 1-877-932-9766. Phone lines are now open. You can also access the show by Gmail. 7, Mr. Bobby, at gmail.com, and I will get it. Now, I'm not going to say that I will read it today, but I will get it. And you can also watch the live broadcast of the compensatory concept. All you have to do is go to YouTube and type in the word Talktainment, then hit the space bar and type in the word radio. Scroll down to Talktainment 2 live on YouTube, and then you can watch it. And while you are there, hit the like and share and subscribe button. Yeah, that's it. And then also you can hear the show in its entirety by going to facebook.com/Talktainment. Okay, those are the 4 ways. Now, Mr. Fuller, this is the time of the hour that we have reserved specifically for you to talk about your book. So go ahead.
You can get the book by going to producejustice.com. You can write that down now if you're anywhere near a pen or you have some type of recording device. Producejustice.com. And what will come up on the screen is all the information that you will need about how to get the basic textbook, which is called a compensatory counter-racist code, and then there's an addition to the basic textbook called a compensatory counter-racist codified word guide. Now these volumes are called, there's a supplementary title, Textbook Workbook for Thought, Speech, and or Action for Victims of Racism, and racism is described singularly as white supremacy. There's no other form of racism except white supremacy, even though the white supremacists will say, they're all forms of racism. Just like right now they're telling black people they're all forms of sexuality, all right? Thousands of them, okay? And so there are thousands of forms of racism. That's what they'll say, but they can't name them, okay? They won't even make an attempt to, except to say that, some black people are black supremacists, and you can't be a black supremacist in a system of white supremacy.
No,
That's impossible.
That's impossible.
Right. But you can get the book by going to producejustice.com. Also, that on that website, you'll see other remarks, including advertisements for this program, etc. Go to producejustice.com.
All righty.
You can also post your questions sometimes.
Okay.
Website, I've been told.
All righty. All righty. Moving right along here from the Gmails. This comes from Roop Dog. He says, "Greetings, Mr. Fuller. On the February the 21st of this year, the compensatory concept, Mr. Fuller stated the statutes of some artists' depictions created within the system of racism, white supremacy, glorify violence. We can see proof of this observation by going to any museum. However, I do not recall seeing glorification of violence or violent people in the historical artifacts of people of color. Some of the artifacts from so-called Egypt or Kemet are more about balance, either between man and woman or man and earth. Mr. Fuller has said in the past, as far as he knows, a system of justice has never existed. Could these historical artifacts be proof we once had balance between people and we lost our way, Mr. Fuller?
That we once had violence between people?
No, that we once had balance between people and then lost our way.
It could be. See, I don't know. That's why I say all history is doubtful and should be. Based on what? Based on logic. Because the average person doesn't even remember things that they have done or things that have happened to them or things that they have seen and heard. The average person doesn't remember this. I know my memory is getting real short now. I mean, there's lots of things I don't remember, and I didn't record them at the time that they were happening, but they did happen. So all history is lagging. Everybody's history. This thing about the complete history of any people, I mean, is not true. It absolutely is not true, because there are millions. Most things are never recorded. Things that happen all the time, every day, right now, with all the technology, they're not recorded. These things will never be known, but they're happening. Somebody saw it happen, but they will never, ever, ever be known by anybody. The details, the names of the people who were there and present when it happened, the people who saw it happen. I mean, it'll be lost forever. And this has been true all down through history. According to what? According to logic. Because you can just take each person that's listening right now, can take themselves as an example. And you ask them something that happened 3 weeks ago that somebody remembers, and they were involved in it, but the person doesn't remember at all. This happens to everybody. So if things are not recorded, and here's another thing I want to say about recordings, meaning writing, people writing things down. Many times people will so-called witness things, and this happens much more often than people think. People who are eyewitnesses to an event will get it incorrect. That's been proven over and over again.
Yes.
A lot of people who say, well, I saw it, and I know that this happened. And what the person thought that they saw, that's what they saw. They thought that they saw something happen, and it really didn't. Not the way that they're telling it. They say that there were 7 people involved when really there were just 4. All right? And that's been proven over and over and over again. Examples like that. And so, if you're talking about history, his story, her story, our story, a lot of it is not true.
Yes.
And so, in answer directly to the question, could it have been at one time we were in that paradise where there are some people who say in recorded history there was. In Christianity, they said it was called what? The Garden of Eden. And everything was perfect. There were no such thing as anybody having a bad day. All right? It was just 2 people around at that time, according to some religious scholars in Christianity, and that was Adam and Eve, and they didn't have what you call a bad day. All days were perfect. Everything was perfect. Everything worked perfectly. There was no type of grief about nothing, ever. No hard feelings about nothing. But from what some Christians say, Adam and Eve only two people on the planet at that time, messed up. And so it's been a mess ever since. That all days have not been the type of days for everybody that they should have been. So that was the only perfect situation that I know about in recorded history. And that is in Genesis of what they call the King James Version of the Holy Bible. I don't know if it's true or not. Many people say that it is. It's just a matter of what you want to believe.
Okay. All righty. Moving on here with another Gmail. This was concerning our program that we had a few weeks ago, speaking about the chickens that come on the roost. This person wrote this, Mr. Fuller, the school shootings are an example of the chickens coming home to roost. So is the opiate epidemic, and so is the opiate epidemic. In the movie The Godfather, the mafia brought heroin into this country to keep it in the black community, and now it's killing them. What say you to that?
Well, the law of compensation says that, what you put out, you may be just subject to get back. You put something into a computer. When you hit the buttons on the computer, you usually get whatever you put in there. I mean, a slot machine doesn't put out any money that's not in the slot machine. It's the law. It's the law of reciprocity. The law of compensation. I described the law of compensation in the beginning of the basic textbook. You compensate. You get compensation for what you put out, supposedly, or somebody gets it. If you plant seeds in the ground, if you plant corn, you're subject to get corn. You won't get asparagus or broccoli. You will get corn, because corn is what you put into the ground. And so if you go around doing harm to people, according to the law of compensation, the harm just might come back to you. Mm-hmm. And it might come back with greater force than what you put out.
Yes.
All right?
All right.
There are all kind of cliche sayings that say that this happens. Say you sow the wind and you get the whirlwind. Mm-hmm. I mean, you put out a little bit of winds, whatnot, and you get the whirlwind because, you get some profits with it,
Mm-hmm. Well, let me
they call it interest on what you invested.
Okay, let me ask you this. In the movie The Godfather, to my understanding, and I can be wrong and correct me if I am, but did I understand them not to want drugs to be introduced or what?
Did you understand what now?
Did I understand that in the movie The Godfather that they did not necessarily want drugs to be introduced into their business?
Well, if you remember the scene, and I do remember it because I've seen it over and over again, because I say that's a very important part of the movie Godfather 1, that black people should look at, that particular scene. And Marlon Brando, the Don Corleone, he said, we have done business in the unions, or he said something to that effect.
Yes, sir.
And we have been in different types of, he said even women, prostitution.
Yes.
He said that's an illegal business. We're in that business. He says, but when it comes to drugs, we have always backed away from drugs. The Corleone family never did drugs. We never sold drugs because I believe, and this is what the Godfather said in the form of Don Corleone, played by Marlon Brando in the movie The Godfather 1, he said at that table, talking to the other so-called crime families, he said, I believe this drug business will destroy us all eventually. We put it out here among the dark people, as somebody suggested at that same table. He said, we're going to have the business control. We're going to put it among the dark people, the black people, the colored people. Say they're animals anyway, so let them lose their souls. Those were the words in the movie.
Yes.
But Don Corleone said, "Yeah, but you can start off that way, but but if you want to use that chickens coming home to roost thing, say, hey, it might just spread. It spreads to your own families."
Yes.
And from what I understand, even in the movie, the part played by the hitman, Pete Clemenza, the person who shot people with the shotgun on the elevator.
Right.
All right. I understand that in Godfather 2, it was hinted that he had died from a drug overdose. All right. So even in the movie, that law of compensation might have kicked in. All right. He was a hitman. His job was to kill people, but he wound up killing himself from an overdose of drugs.
So can you see some validity in this statement that since drugs have been introduced, and in particular the opiate crisis that this country, or this whatever this is now facing, could be a form of the chickens coming home to roost?
Well, it could be a form, and that's unfortunate and whatnot. But it's unfortunate that you have this system of racism anyway. Drugs have been spread all over the world by the white supremacists, where they are dark people, all right? Before then, it was alcohol, black people getting drunk on Saturday night. In fact, that was a regular ritual. Black people themselves embraced that culture for years before drugs. There are many songs that black people wrote, all right, which is understandable. You're right about the things you know about. And, Bad, Bad Whiskey by Amos Milburn, made me lose my happy home. We almost say it with joy. We sing songs like that.
Yes.
Back when whiskey was the thing. People talking about getting drunk on Saturday night and bragging about it, all right? Sunday morning, my head was bad, but it's worth it for the times that I had. But now I've got to get my rest, because Mondays is a mess, okay? That's in Fats Domino, who passed recently, a blues singer, singing about what? Going out on a weekend and getting drunk. But he got to get himself together, use Sunday to get himself together after a Saturday night of drinking.
Wow.
And so he can be ready for Monday.
Okay. We will have to leave it there. That is very interesting. Maybe we'll pick that back up in the second hour. TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio the way it should be heard. Thank you for listening, and stay tuned for the second hour of the compensatory concept here and heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com.
Thanks for listening to the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio.
The most important question in all racial matters is why. One should always ask it.
Radio, the way it should be heard.
You've got the power. The world's greatest radio. TalkTainmentRadio.com. Talktainment Radio, worldwide sound. Talktainmentradio.com. We give you a reason to come. The world's greatest radio. We give you a reason to stay. Radio, the way it should be heard. You got the power.
The views and opinions expressed are those of the host and guest and not necessarily those of TalkTainmentRadio.com, the management, the staff, or K&E World Network, LLC.
Live call-in talk show. Dial 1-877-932-9766 and join the conversation here on TalkTainmentRadio.com.
This is the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio. Radio, the way it should be heard. And now, Mr. Neely Fuller.
If you do not understand white supremacy, which is racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Only confuse you. Only confuse you.
Welcome to the second hour Fuller here on TalkTimitRadio.com. We go where you go on the world's greatest radio. You are now in touch with the compensatory concept, and I am Mr. Bobby, the co-host of the compensatory concept, and this is radio the way it should be heard. You can get in contact with the show by calling 1-877-932-9766. You may also Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, @gmail.com. And you can also do this. You can view the show and hear it by going to YouTube and then type in the word Talktainment. Hit the space bar and type in the word radio. Scroll down to Talktainment number 2, and you're there. And while you're there, hit the like and subscribe button, and we'll be very happy that you do that. This hour of the compensatory concept, the second hour, is the donation hour. I'd like to refer to it as. The second hour is sponsored by all the donations that come in for the second hour of the compensatory concept. And all we're asking you to do, if this program means a lot to you, then send a donation into TalkTainmentRadio.com for the compensatory concept. Now, Brian Gaston, Eric Williams, B.W. Gifts, Helen Nance, Don Mishner, and Jane Lance are regular givers to the compensatory concept second hour. Mr. Fuller and myself are not compensated by the donations that come in. So please go down to the web page and hit the donation button and donate any amount that you would like for the continuation of the second hour of the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller. Okay, Mr. Fuller, we're speaking about the code, and I was watching the movie A Few Good Men. I don't know why I happen to like that movie, but there was one part in that movie where a cadet said something about the code, and the code said unit, core, God, and country. He said that's the code. That is the code of the Marines. You said that every person has to have a code. With that being said, if everybody operating with that code, then what is the code that we should have in adopting the pursuit of justice?
The code that I have written. That's why I tried to write one. You know, people sometimes ask me, Fuller, where's the whole code? I mean, you know, is this the whole code? I say, there's no such thing as a whole code. A code is just a way of getting things done, getting through the day, just one day. Just get through that day doing the best things that you can possibly do for that day. We are all given by whatever created a day and put us in this day time and energy. We all have time and energy in that day. How do you use your time and energy in order to compensate for what you have been given, which is breath in your body and a body for the breath to be in, by whatever created the universe to produce the best possible result? And since we're all, if you're a person of color and a prisoner, we're all prisoners of war. We were born in a system of racism. You do the best you can in that system of racism to do what? The most constructive things that you can possibly do. That is what we're here for. I mean, that's the logical reasoning that we should take according to the law of compensation for why we are here. We're here to do what? Carry out an assignment. What is that assignment? Solving problems. Why is that our assignment? Because we have problems. I mean, you know, you're born into a world full of problems. Babies come here crying. They don't come here laughing because the baby perceives that there are problems, all right? Even without learning what the problems are. The baby can feel it. Babies have feelings, okay? So that's the logical conclusion.
Yes, sir.
Why is it that babies come into the world not laughing, but they come into the world crying? Because the world is a mess. That's why. And it's our job, we hit the ground running. I mean, with our baby feet. And as we grow, each and every day is supposed to be spent trying to figure out how to compensate for these problems that the world is full of. And you compensate for a world of problems by trying to solve each and every problem that you as an individual is confronted with each and every day. And you have a code for doing that. A code just means you figure out the best way. That's all a code means.
Okay.
The best way to get something done.
Okay.
I've looked at that movie, and that is on my movie list, A Few Good Men. I recommend that people do see it because for the logic that is used in the movie, in the different scenes and whatnot, and different lessons you can learn.
Yes.
You know.
Yes. Let me see if I can play a minute of that. Galen, can you turn my mic up a little bit? I want to play a snippet of that. Let's see here. If I can get it on here. Okay. How about that? Never mind. I can't get it up. I'll do it on the next one. Let's go to the phone lines. Line number 1, you're on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead with your call, please.
Good morning. I would like to. I have 3 questions.
I can only take 2.
Okay. Well, okay. I have 2 questions and a statement. And the first statement is in regards to the last what Mr. Fuller had said about babies coming into the world crying. Part of that is because they also have to breathe. It's to stimulate their breathing once they come out of the womb. And I wanted to know what he has to say according to that, as it relates to them, the breathing and the crying going hand in hand. My first question is, or really is a request for him to go into more details and to kind of like send it home as the specific cause of black-on-black crime. Not a general overview, but like a surgical assessment of that. Then my question is, the gun or the pistol or the rifle, is that an idol in the system that is worshipped in the system of racism, white supremacy? And is it one of the idols of the system of racism, white supremacy, along with money too?
Okay, now you are aware that you did ask 4 questions.
I apologize.
Okay. Now, I don't know what Mr. Fuller remembers of your question, but Mr. Fuller, can you...
Yeah, sometimes it's kind of hard for me to keep track of the questions because I like to answer one question at a time. Because that is even what I recommend that people always do in the compensatory code. Because if you're at meetings or whatnot on the job, you never move to the second question before you've answered the first one.
Okay.
That's a part of the code itself. Why? Because it alleviates or it dispels confusion.
Confusion, yes, sir. Okay.
See what I mean?
So
you ask one question, like in court. One question is asked. You don't move to question number 2 and question number 3 until you give the answer to the first question. Now, the first question is about babies crying. I just came to that conclusion myself. I don't even know if that's true, that why babies cry. I mean, about the reason that I gave. But that's the reason that I gave because I came to that conclusion. Because I think that babies, people have senses and whatnot. Babies haven't spoken the language or anything like that, so babies speak, they don't know what language they're going to be speaking, so they speak in the language that they are familiar with the minute they are born. And what is that language? The language of pain and pleasure, all right? So I say that the baby evidently is in pain. And in pain about what? Because the baby probably, I don't remember I was born. I don't remember, when I was born or what I did.
Yeah.
But somebody was there. But it's been my observation that babies cry when they are born.
Okay.
They inhale. And from the moment they inhale, they breathe. Then they begin to cry. They cry out. That's when you know that the baby is here. The baby is born. The baby is what they call alive.
Yes.
But the very breath that the baby takes in brings in what? Not clear air, but poison air. That could be that the very air that we breathe is poisoned by all the things that people are doing, because people themselves are poisoned. We are poisonous people, all right?
Yeah, toxic.
All over this planet. There's no person who is exactly the way that the person should be. I mean, all of the evidence shows that.
Yeah.
Why? People make mistakes. People do things that they should not do. Everybody does, all right? And so we're supposed to be organisms that are mistake-proof, okay? That's the concept. We don't do things that we shouldn't do, but we deliberately do things that we shouldn't do, all of us. We all, if we tell the truth, okay? And under the system of white supremacy, the system of white supremacy teaches everybody to deliberately do things that should not be done.
Okay.
The whole soul of the system of white supremacy is about that. Do things that shouldn't be done. Harm people for sure. You must do harm to people. Find instruments to do harm to people. Glorify doing harm to people.
Okay.
Have television programs about people doing harm to people. Figure out newer and better ways to do harm to people. That's the system of white.
Okay. Do you remember any other of his questions before we go on?
Is the gun worshipped in the system of white supremacy racism, and why is it worshipped?
Absolutely, yes, it is.
And the specific cause of black-on-black crime, in addition to that.
What was your question now?
Yeah, the gun, is it worshipped in the system of racism, white supremacy? Why?
Yes, according to all of the indications, yes.
Okay.
Yes, the gun is worship. And the result of people using guns is worship. You take people who consider themselves highly intelligent, they will go out and kill a deer, and not only kill the deer, they will cut the deer's head off and put it right over a door, put it over a mantelpiece, a fireplace.
Yeah, a wall in your study.
Yes, and have people come into the house and say, I killed that deer, and I cut its head off, and I brought it into the house. Now, here's a deer head in a house, all right? And this is supposed to be sophisticated. It's sophisticated savagery. That's what that is.
Yes. Okay. All right, caller. Thank you so much for your call there. Thank you so much. TalkTainmentRadio.com is a 24/7 no-charge worldwide broadcast facility with hosts delivering on various topics such as news and lifestyle, sports, health, wellness, religion, and politics. Now, here's one, again, that I'd like to share with you, and it's my show, which premieres on March the 20th at 6 p.m. from 6 to 7. It's called Talking Sports with Mr. Bobby. Now, on that show, we are scheduled to have Brother Muko, who called in the first hour, from Baltimore, Maryland. He will be describing the situations that are actually going on in Baltimore. For example, with the Wire show, the TV drama on HBO, The Wire show, and also what he's trying to do about it with his care unit in there, the compensatory care unit. I like that term. But anyway, he will be our guest to describe what's going on. Even though we talk about sports, we talk about issues that we like to bring to light, or anybody that's doing something to make aware or fight in justice. We want those people on whatever businesses or whatever you're doing to make this thing work. But that's Talking Sports with Mr. Bobby, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com. The next show is March the 20th from 6 to 7 p.m. Eastern on TalkTainmentRadio.com. As a matter of fact, you can go to TalkTainmentRadio.com for all the shows that we have, bios, pictures, little information there. You can go there and get that information, the times and the dates and all that is right there on that show. And while you are there, make sure that you donate to the second hour of the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. Mr. Fuller and myself are not compensated for that. So all that money goes into the production of this second hour, which you wanted. And trust me, both of us are very glad that you have done that and want to hear the suggestions that Mr. Fuller makes. All that is exclusive from talktainmentradio.com. That's radio the way it should be heard. Hey, Galen, cut my mic up a little bit so I can play this for the code. Okay. I think, Mr. Fuller, this is from the movie A Few Good Men, if I can get it on the...
Of killing. No, sir. What was your intent? To train him, sir. Train him to do what? Train him to think of his unit before himself. To respect the code. What's the code? Unit, Corps, God, Country. I beg your pardon? Unit, Corps, God, Country. Sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Galen. That was in that movie, a very good movie. I happen to like that myself, Mr. Fuller, A Few Good Men. Very, very good movie. Okay, thank you, Galen. What line am I on? Line number 2? Line number 1? Okay, line 1. You are now on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead with your question.
Yes, my name is Mark. I'm from Maryland. With the rise of the rest of the world and, coming up in the country and, slowly how this country is, slowing down its power, how do you think that's going to affect racism and white supremacy?
Mr. Fuller?
How's it going?
I didn't quite get that question.
Okay. Could you speak up, sir? Hello?
Well, I said, with the rise of the rest of the world coming up and pretty much ignoring this country, and this country is slowly, dismantling itself, slowly the power from this country is coming down, how is that going to affect white supremacy?
I'm hearing I'm not hearing that question at all. I mean, I hear talk, but I can't. Hello.
Okay.
Can you give me a synopsis of what the question is, Mr. Bobby? I mean,
okay.
What does it seem like he's saying?
Okay. With all the violence that's going on, is that what you're talking about, sir?
No, I said with the rise of the rest of the world's coming up in power, all the countries coming up, and this country slowly losing its title, how is that going to affect racism and white supremacy in this country?
Okay, if I understand him correctly, with the rise of other countries, Mr. Fuller, that are coming up in power, opposed to the United States, how is their rise in power going to affect the system of racism, which is white supremacy?
Or anything that non-white people do, that's the way you look at it, that is of constructive value. I tell people, anytime you're doing anything of constructive value, you're hurting the system of white supremacy, because no person of color is supposed to do or say anything that makes sense. I mean, so anytime any people who have color in their skin do anything that has constructive results, something beneficial that helps people to think constructively or to act constructively rather than non-constructively, you are hurting the system of white supremacy. The white supremacists want the entire world of people of color to always do stupid things. And many people of color, black people in the Northwestern Hemisphere, under the system of white supremacy, we are taught to worship anything that's stupid. Just go and find something stupid to do and do as much of it as we possibly can do and walk around bragging about it. All right? That's how we have been taught. We're systematically taught to do that. And in a school, I mean, the young male or female who is black in an all-black school is kind of ridiculed, I have heard. Because I have certainly witnessed it, and not as much as in the old days when I was coming up, people were more constructive than I understand that they are now.
Yes.
Then in a lot of the schools, you can't learn anything of constructive value because the person who is trying to learn something and do something of constructive value is ridiculed and by the other students. who want to do something that doesn't make sense at all. Now, they didn't get that naturally. That's something that's been taught to them indirectly by the white supremacists. And the answer to the person who asked that question about the rise of people who are of people of color, who are trying to do something more and more of constructive value, learn how to build a locomotive, learn how to plant better crops, learn how to go into the ground and come up with an irrigation system where they can have clean water and whatnot. The white supremacists don't want that. They want control of all of that. Anything of constructive value, they want control of it. Oil, tin, gold, anything that might be used constructively. They want to keep control of that. They don't want non-white people anywhere to have control of anything that makes sense. But anything that's a bunch of garbage, anything that fills a person's mind with garbage, if that person is black, the white supremacists are all for that. I mean, nothing but just open the top of a black person's head and just pour garbage in, this non-stop garbage, and then put the cap on it and have them walking around doing garbage stuff all of their entire existence until the white supremacists come around and beat them over the head and make them do something for the system of white supremacy that makes sense. Now, they will help a black person do something that's going to help the system of white supremacy. But the minute you do that, or not doing that, rather, if you're black on this planet, the minute that the white supremacists turn you loose from doing something constructive for them, then they want you to go off and do something that's non-constructive for yourself. And we just see that in little things, like, as far back as you can remember. Like I alluded to earlier in this program. You can come on a job, and on that job you're doing something constructive that the white supremacists want you to do. You're building things, you're repairing things, you're cleaning things. And the white supremacists want that. It makes them comfortable. And it makes you comfortable, all right, if you're a person of color. But the minute the white supremacists say, okay, you can go now and do some of the things, that you want to do. But they have us trained that when we leave their presence, we immediately start doing what? Like in the old days, like I said earlier in this program. Get off the job and do what? Go right down the street to the whiskey store. Buy some whiskey. That's what we used to do in the old days. And get what? Drunk. Yeah, do something stupid. And if you half drunk, go and stab somebody, shoot somebody of color right there in your own neighborhood. And the only time you stop doing it is when the white supremacists said, okay, that's enough of that now. I mean, Saturday and Sunday, we gave you time to do all that stupid stuff. Now, this is Monday, you come back and start doing something constructive for me.
Yes, sir.
Not for you, but for me. But when you're off on your own, make sure that whatever you do when you're around your cousins and your so-called friends and your neighborhood, I mean, you go out and do your gang banging then and all like that. Do a whole bunch of stupid stuff wherever you are.
Yes, sir.
But when you come over on this side of town, where I am, that's the only time in your entire existence that you do something that makes sense. And let's keep it that way.
Let's keep it that way. All righty. Let's go to the phone line. What line am I on here again? Line number 1? Okay. Line number 1, you're on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead with your question, please.
Good morning, Mr. Bobby and Mr. Fuller. I have 2 questions. Mr. Fuller, a lot of times black people allude to ancestors or back in Africa trying to imply that correctness existed. Can you explain why we were and still remain primitive, silly, and or stupid?
Because the white supremacists guarantee that. That's what white supremacists mean. We're born in their prison. We have never been out of it. So we do what they tell us to do. I mean, even when we find out better, we're still in prison. And I've found out, a better idea. I mean, sometimes they tell us about justice and all like that, but it doesn't exist. Justice doesn't exist anywhere on the planet. Why? On account of the white supremacists don't want it. That's not good for their business.
Mm-hmm.
They do their business based on non-justice.
Yes.
They guarantee that persons are mistreated, and they guarantee that people that need help the most don't get it.
Don't get it, yes.
Yes, that's what the system of white supremacy is deliberately designed to do.
All righty. And what's your second question, sir, quickly?
Yes, sir. And can you just explain how it'll just have an overnight effect if black people don't contact each other unless for a constructive reason?
Oh, okay. Mr. Fuller?
Oh, yes, that alone. Just think that there's no such thing as black people contacting each other in order to do some gang banging. Everything will get quiet in Chicago right quick. That black people say that anything that I do, anytime I come in contact with another black person, if I don't have anything constructive to do or say, listen to this now. If I don't have anything constructive to do or say, I'm not going to even be around that black person. Now that automatically means what? There's not going to be any robberies. All right? Robberies are not constructive. All right? It's not going to be any insults. All right? If you guarantee yourself that if you see a black person a block away and you have some kind of thought that you're going to do harm to that black person, you go the other way. You don't even make contact with the person. That's why I say that no contact, no conflict. This is in the textbook. You cannot have conflict with somebody you're not in contact with.
Yeah, that's true.
All right? And that includes on your so-called, what do you call them, iPads and whatnot. I mean, you don't make contact with anybody unless you have something constructive to say or you're making some kind of plans to do something. I mean, constructive. If you're making contact with another person of color, all contacts should be of constructive value. You don't even talk to the person unless you have something constructive to say.
Yes.
All right? Black people, we are very talkative. All right? We like to high-five and hug and talk and all like that. We need to do away with all of that unless it has something to do with some kind of constructive plan, some type of plan that's going to have a constructive result. Otherwise, don't even talk to the person. Don't say not one word if you're not going to produce a constructive result. This will change the entire world overnight. And the white supremacists, I mean, their whole foundation is gone. I mean, it evaporates. Just on that alone. Just all non-white people saying, hey, if I don't have anything to say or do when I come in contact with a non-white person that proves to be constructive, I'm not making contact.
Okay, let's go to the phone line. What line am I on, sir? Line number one? Okay. Line number one, you are now on with Mr. Fuller. What is your question?
Yeah, you got me, brother?
Go ahead, bro.
Oh, good morning to you and Brother Fuller.
Yes.
I appreciate you.
Wait a minute. Let me set the clock for you so I can give you your full time. Okay.
Wait now, you're going to give me a little more time. I want to ask him a question and make a comment.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, Brother Fuller, did I hear you say on Carl Nelson's show that the Caucasian people were the smartest people on the planet?
I said the white supremacists are the smartest people on the planet.
Okay. Well, I understand what you're saying, but I just want to address that and say I wouldn't say they're the smartest people on the planet. I would say they're the most evilest, devilish people on the planet. Because as we go through people all over the world, they all have came up with some inventions and how to survive in the area that they was in. But when it comes to killing people and making weapons to kill people, they are smart when it comes to that. And we do know that the gunpowder came from the Chinese. And black people had so many inventions, can't nobody even count them. And white folks stole them or took them all. And that's including blood plasma. So that wouldn't make them the smartest, but I do understand what you're trying to say. Let me say this in closing. Black people, listen to me very carefully, and I'm going to get off here before the brother run me. Go look at Nazi Germany and the start of Mr. Hitler. You're going to see exactly what is going on here. They are creating an atmosphere in this country for black people to be slaughtered. That's why they will never take these assault weapons from these psychopaths, because they have a plan for those assault weapons. And that is why they will never apologize to black people, because they are not finished with us. That's why they keep dehumanizing us, because when you're going to exterminate a people, you must dehumanize them. That's why they never tell blacks, hey, we apologize for slavery. Hey, we're going to give y'all Montana, Idaho. We're going to rebuild y'all people. We're sorry about this. They have never done that. And they are not going to do it until they finish with what they got planned for us. Wow. That's when they apologize.
All right, my brother.
Okay, thank you, brother. Okay. Appreciate you.
Yes, sir. All righty. My brother from Chicago. All right, Mr. Fuller, this is a Gmail from Brother Adams. He's speaking about the Economic Policy Institute report. Are you familiar with the Economic Policy Institute? Or have you ever heard of them?
No.
Okay. Anyway, he said that the findings of this report, or here it is. He said the findings of this report are in direct contradiction to the claim that black unemployment is at an all-time low. I guess they include tripling of black incarceration as employment, having reference to the prison industrial complex, which a lot of black men, or black people, not just black men, are put in there to feed the private prison system. They got to have somebody to throw in there. So black people are disproportionately put into the prison systems to support the programs or the wealth that comes out of that in the product making of that. Now, have you heard of that, where blacks have been incarcerated to produce products that are actually sold on the market?
Well, it's always been, going back to prison farms. I haven't heard of anything recently, but I've always heard it down through the years. Sure, and the reason there isn't more of it is because there are a lot of white people who have jobs, and this is kind of depicted in that movie Shawshank Redemption. People might remember the scene where the warden of the prison, a character called Warden Norton, was talking to a contractor who had workers, all right? And this contractor came to the warden of the prison saying, you have free labor. You have prisoners out here working on these farms and doing contract work and doing road work and all like that. And I'm out here trying to, I'm in the contract business doing road work and doing farm work. And so your prisoners are competing with me. And so I'd like for you to have your prisoners work somewhere else, and I'll bribe you and give you some money on the side so that you will always consign them to work somewhere else other than where I have my contracts made with the state where I'm making money, because I have to pay my people to work. If you got prison labor, you're getting free labor.
Yes.
And there's always been that contrast among the white supremacists, all right?
Okay.
Where there, a little bit of conflict. That's what the so-called Civil War was about. Mm-hmm. Some white people were saying, we have to pay other white people to do the work where we are, but you got a whole lot of black people that you haul in here as slaves, and you don't pay them anything, which means we can't compete with that. And so it's bad for our business. So we're going to have to come to some kind of agreement or something, and I don't know what that's going to be, because there's no way that I can pay people to work for me, and you got people working for you that you don't have to pay, and I can compete with you.
That's true.
And that's what the so-called Civil War was about.
Okay.
White people fighting white people about how best to handle black people.
That's all it was about.
And that has not stopped.
No, sir.
Right.
No, that's one of the things that Johnson found in the Otto Kerner report, which was discussed last week. What line am I on, sir? 2? Line number 2. You're on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead, please. Line number 2. You are on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead, please. They're not there? Okay. All right. Line number 1. Are you on with Mr. Fuller? Okay. 2? Okay, they're not there. Okay, okay? Thank you. Mr. Fuller, that the Economic Policy Institute Research for Ideas and Shared Prosperity. It just says here that it's a nonprofit group, independent think tank that researches the impact of economic trends and policies on working people in the United States. The EPI research helps make policies. So when Brother Adams asked about, I guess that doesn't include the prison labor force. I don't know where they get their statistics, but if this is true, then the statistical data that the Economic Policy Institute comes up with would have to be obtuse. Wouldn't you think so, Mr. Fuller?
The Economic Policy Institute would have to be what?
Have to be skewed, because they're not really dealing with true statistics, being that the prison population is not included in their research.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know one way or another, because, I think it's Mark Twain that said there are 3 kinds of lies. I mean, and I don't remember exactly what the words were, but he said that there are damned lies.
Yeah, he did say that.
Yeah, right. Okay. And he was just talking about the different type of lies that you get.
Okay.
And he said you get a lot of them.
Yes.
Well, in the system of white supremacy, it's kind of difficult to find out what is the truth about anything.
Yes.
The white supremacists thrive on confusion, and confusion means you put out a whole lot of false things.
Lies and deceptions.
The main thing, a master at deception does what? A master of deception says a lot of things that are true. All right? If you're going to be a master deceiver, you do say a lot of things that are absolutely true.
But
you will mix in with it things that are absolutely not true.
Yes.
And this causes what?
Confusion. Before we go to the next call, let me ask you, since you were on that, and then I'll take the next call. What is a white lie?
Oh, well, now, in the word guide, the compensatory counter-racist word guide, which I have written, that's a term that you don't use, but you ask questions about it.
Which we
just like you just did.
Yes.
And you always ask the person who is using the term. Now, that's throughout the entire book. Whomever uses the term, that's the person who is supposed to describe or define what that term means.
Okay, I understand that, but I heard that term used in a press briefing by the White House, that someone in there had admitted that they had told a white lie. And, obviously I couldn't ask them what a white lie is. And since we're on this program, and I know that you didn't say that, but isn't a lie? Whether I didn't know a lie had colors, and I'm trying to find what is a white lie. Could you help us, or could you help me?
That's why in the code book it says when a person uses the term, that term is in there, white lie. Your reaction should be directed to the person who uses the term. No other person should answer that question except the person that is using it.
I understand that.
I don't use the term.
Okay, I understand that, but how can I ask the person in the White House, well, what did you mean?
That's a part of the trick. See, they said and there's an expression, the White House made a statement today. Now, first of all, a house doesn't make statements except the house is making a statement just by being a house. I've never heard a house say anything, all right, that I could interpret in language. I mean, what does a house say? That's another trick that's used. I mean, you see it in newspapers all the time. The White House issued a statement today. And just put that in your mind. The White House made a statement today. Stop and think about that. A house made a statement? First of all, how can a house make a statement? How does a house make a statement? But see, they don't tell you the name of the person who was in the house who made the statement. That's the trick. They pull this all the time. And they pull it, they'll say, not only the White House, they say that the company made a statement today.
Yes.
Well, who made this statement that you were fired?
Well,
the company fired you. Wait a minute.
Yeah.
I want the name of a person.
Well, they did actually name a person that did make this statement.
Okay, well, that's the person who is supposed to explain exactly what a white lie is. I mean, that's the only person that can answer that question.
Okay.
But that's the person, not the house, not the floor, not the ceiling, not a clock on the wall. A person made that statement. So that's the person who should define the answer to the question, ma'am, sir, what is a white lie by definition?
All right. I got you.
Yes, the person that makes the statement should answer the question.
Okay.
Well, that applies to everybody everywhere on the planet.
Okay.
Whomever makes the statement should explain what the statement means.
All righty. I think I understand. Line number 1, what is your question for Mr. Fuller? Go ahead, please.
Yes, peace to the caller, me, and to the host, and to the platform.
Thank you.
The question I have is about victims of racism, white supremacy, especially the males defending themselves in the area of war or warfare, and how racism, white supremacy operates in the area of religion. Would it logically be an issue that our confusion about the Creator and our fear of racism, white supremacy would keep us stagnated from making moves to defend ourselves and be a free people like most other nations in the world?
Okay, Mr. Fuller?
If I understand the question, he's saying, how do we react to religion? I'm trying to understand the question.
Okay, sir, could you repeat the question and kind of shorten it so that Mr. Fuller can properly address it?
My question is that, religion is one of the areas of people's activity, plus racism, white supremacy operates in this area. I'm saying as far as black people or victims of racism, white supremacy defending themselves, the confusion that's created by the racist white supremacists or the devil, and black people's perception or understanding of their religion as it relates to a white man being their God or not their God, does that play into their defending themselves or being free with their alleged religion if they fear white people more than the Creator?
Okay, I'll go right to what the code says about religion. Okay. Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, I'll go right to what the code says, what I've written about how everybody should, the recommendation, the suggestion, should approach the issue of religion, period. There's 3 things. Keep it real simple. You ask a person, what is the name of your religion? If the person has one. If the person says, I do have a religion. So you ask that person, whether the person is white or non-white. It'll take you right where you need to go. I mean, according to the code. These 3 questions. What is the name of your religion? That's the first thing you ask a person. and don't interfere with the answer. Let the person tell you the name of the religion that person has, because most religions have names. Second question, what does your religion, sir or ma'am, require you to do in all of the following areas of activity? Economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, other people's religions, sex, and war, because most religions have requirements. There might be some religions that don't have requirements, but if you ask a person the name of that person's religion, the next thing you want to know, after they give you the name of the religion, so it won't be any confusion about the name, then you want to know what does their religion require them to do in all of those areas of activity. All right? Economics through war. Then you ask the third question after they answer the first two questions. What does your religion, ma'am or sir, require you to do when you interact with me? And that's all that anybody should ever ask anybody when you talk about another person's religion. And that's all you should have to say. Just listen for those answers, because those answers will take you right where you need to be. Might not be where you want to be. It might not take you where they want you to be, but it'll take everybody where they should be, because now you have order about somebody's religion.
Okay.
That person's religion may require them to follow you around and make you accept their religion. All right, you want to know that. In other words, your religion requires you to force me to accept your religion? Yes, my religion requires me to force you, brute force if necessary, to accept my religion as your religion. Well, that's all I want to know. You know, that's why I ask, what does your religion require you to do when you interact with me? So now when I see you coming, if I don't want to accept your religion, I know to run or to stop you from harming me. All right? If that's what your religion requires you to do when you interact with me. Because all religions require somebody to do something. All you want to know is what are those requirements.
Okay. All righty.
That's really, I mean, all the stuff. Now, telling me if a person says they're a Christian, okay, and they start telling me about, you know, Bible stories and all like that, well, you know, you can just simply say to the person, I don't need to know all of that. I just need to know how you are going to interact with me. All right? That's what the code recommends.
Okay.
Because how people interact with each other, that's going to be the most important thing anyway.
Yes, sir. All right, now, in the remaining 2 or 3 minutes that we have on today's program, I need you to talk about your book.
Oh, you get the book that I'm talking about, and the things that I'm talking about come out of the book. They're in the book. I put them in there. Is the compensatory counter-racist code. You can get it by going to producejustice.com. That's producejustice.com. And what you will see there, I haven't looked at it recently, but you should see a basic book called a revised expanded edition. That's what most people get, a compensatory counter-racist code. And you can also get an addition to the basic book, which is a compensatory counter-racist codified word guide. And both of them are textbook workbooks for victims of white supremacy.
Okay, now I do have a question, because I do get communication from people who listen to the show who are, I have a brother in Belgium, I have a brother in Spain, a brother in England, a brother in South Africa, and a brother in French Guiana. Only one of those countries, the brother that lives in England, can get the book. What about those other countries about getting the book?
trying to get it in other places. The other places I can't get it in now. It's just England, what they call the United Kingdom, but basically England and Canada.
Okay, you can get it in Canada.
Outside of what is called the continental United States. Okay. Only Canada and England right now. I'm trying to set it up with some outlets, and I'm seeking information of how best to go about doing this at a cost that's not prohibitive, because I'm sort of like a one-person operation, but I got other people who are cooperating with me now, and we're trying to get the overseas shipments all over the world, because the race problem cannot be solved unless it's solved all over the world.
But yeah, that's true.
I mean, black people in the Northwestern Hemisphere usually speak of, well, what's going on right here in what they call the United States. No. You should always think of the race problem worldwide. Otherwise, it can't be solved. It's not going to be solved anywhere if it's not solved everywhere.
So
the King got that correct.
Right. So the best way to get the book is to go to producejustice.com.
But right now, overseas, you might say outside of the quote-unquote continental United States, you can only get it in Canada and in England.
And the book is designed for victims of
white supremacy.
Okay, and then
go to producejustice.com.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. Thank you for listening, callers. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. Talktainmentradio.com, the world's greatest radio.